Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to today's LinkPointers webinar, Did You Know How to Get the Most Out of Your Outlook and Salesforce Integration? My name is Jill, and I'll be your moderator today. Before we get started, I'd like to cover a few brief housekeeping. All attendees are muted and placed in listen-only mode for the duration of the webinar. In the GoToWebinar viewer, you can make our presentation full screen for easy viewing. You can feel free to submit any questions you have for our speaker today by using the questions section in the GoToWebinar panel. This webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be sent out to everyone later today. For those of you who may be new to LinkPoint 360, we have been the leading provider of email to CRM integration for over 15 years, dedicated to enhancing productivity and increasing CRM adoption. We bring together Microsoft Outlook and IBM Notes with either Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics CRM, or Inforce CRM. We have over 70,000 customers worldwide and continue to stand out with innovative productivity solutions, standardized integration with other Salesforce applications, and full support for POP3 and Citrix or terminal services environments. Our LinkPoint Connect product brings CRM data inside the email application, making it easier for users to interact with and send data to the CRM without leaving their email. And in addition to view, record, create, and sync functionality, our customers leverage flexible control over how their data is managed and are able to interact with CRM custom objects or entities. For today's webinar, we will be sharing tips and tricks to maximize your use of LinkPoint Connect. Whether you're new to our email integration tool or have been a customer for years, you'll discover new strategies and functionality today to help you become even more productive. We're going to highlight a few new or lesser-known features in LinkPoint Connect and highlight some best practices for streamlining how you work between Outlook and Salesforce. At the end of the presentation, we'll field any questions you may have. And now I'd like to introduce today's presenter. Tom Russo is one of our account executives here at LinkPoint 360. I'll go ahead and switch the controls over to Tom now and let him walk you through LinkPoint Connect today. Tom?
Hi guys, this is Tom from LinkPoint. Thank you for the intro, Jill. Hope everyone's doing well today. So I think this should be a pretty handy webinar for people that are looking to gain a further understanding into LinkPoint Connect as far as what tips and tricks can be useful for your use case, for your workflow. If there's just any rocks to uncover, we can do that as well. So I'll show you the ins and outs of the tool, how it works for me, how we can just minimize the click-throughs, what some options are through the different facets of the tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break the integration into 4 parts right now. And we will go over different tips for the configuration screen of how to configure and set your link points. And then we can also go into the different uses for the side panel, for the email recording, and for the synchronization. So I'll go over a few different tips for each of those areas. Okay, so the first tip is, or the first area that we'll go over is the configuration screen. Right. So to get to that screen, there are a few ways you can get to it. Of course, if you click on your LinkPoint tab at the top of your Outlook and go to your configure option, you can get there, or you can double-click the white envelope in your icon tray at the bottom right here. So if we double-click that, now we're at our LinkPoint Assist screen. All right. So the first tip I like to share here is how LinkPoint can work with alternate email addresses. So what I mean by this is when we have a contact that emails us, perhaps they have their personal email, their work email. Maybe they also have a variation of work emails, whether it's fred.johnson@gmail or f.johnson@gmail, or different variations. So there's really, maybe there's no rhyme or reason of why they're emailing from one or the other, but you still want them to register with the information in Salesforce when you're highlighting on that email, when you're recording that information and syncing it up. So LinkPoint can read alternate emails, but you would have to turn that option on within the configure screen. So to do that, you go under your Salesforce option under your connectors, And the last option box here that we have is the email field. So this is going to search additional email address fields when recording the email. So if we have Fred's personal, we have a secondary, however many other emails there are here, we're going to try to gather that information up and relate it to that same contact we have in the side panel and recording options. So we would need to check this option on. Okay, this would be off by default. All right. The second tip that we can go, or we can configure in this in the LinkPoint Assist screen, is if we are recording information and perhaps we have a colleague on that email. So when we're recording, and I'll just go to an email record, for instance, whether it's inbound or outbound, if we have a colleague on this email, we may see them suggested in the record to field as well. Okay, if they do have a contact record in Salesforce, they will show up here. A lot of the time, there really is no need to record against your coworkers as far as we are just looking to record against the customer, the client, the prospect that we're working with. Okay, so I know could be a lot of cases where we're excluding that colleague off of the email. This can be tedious, this can be annoying when we're trying to do this over and over again. All right. So if we want to ignore our colleagues by their domain, if we do all share the same company domain, we can set that in our configure screen. So when we go to our record option or component, I'm sorry, it's the side panel component, excuse me, and under the ignore list, by default, LinkPoint is going to add our own email address here. Okay, that's by default. So that's why we won't see our own email show up or our own record show up when we're associating the email to Salesforce. However, we can add additional emails if there's a partner or someone that we constantly work with, or we can include the domain. So when we include the domain of the email address, then anyone with that domain will be ignored when recording, when syncing and associating. Okay. The third option that I like to go over in the side panel is when we're creating follow-up tasks. So if we go to our Options tab under the Record component, where we have our default follow-up with, this is going to be set with nothing. Okay, so it's really up to us to schedule a follow-up task or appointment when we're recording that email. Okay, of course, if you wanted to default with a task or appointment, that's going to ask you what you want it to set at when we're recording. Once we do this, we can also set we can have a preset information as far as the amount of days we want to record the task for. If it's usually, I believe it's set to 7. This is usually set to 7 calendar days. Okay, so it could record or ask you or suggest to record over the weekend if that's something that you want it to happen. I find it useful that it is set, in my instance, I usually put 2 days, and I usually leave it as business days. So when I am creating that follow-up task, it will ignore that Saturday and Sunday, and if it doesn't fall on the Friday, it would go on the next coming Monday. Okay. We also want to set a default to record the email to that record, to that task or appointment. We can have this checked on, so we don't have to do all of these options when recording those follow-ups. All right. Now, to lock all these settings in place, but if we don't want to have a default task every time we're recording, we can now turn this option to off. So now it will default with no task, but it would still lock in these settings in place. So when I do want to follow a task, it will still have these locked-in settings. Okay, that could be useful. So there's less click-throughs, there's less thinking. Rather, when we're recording that task, we just know it's going to follow up in 2 days, and we just have to put in those additional comments or modify that subject line. All right, so that could be a pretty handy tool. All right, so those are a few tips and tricks for the configure screen, whether it's looking up the associated or alternate email addresses, ignoring colleagues in our ignore list, or locking in follow-up settings in place. All right, I'll just exit out of this. Where's my record window? Here it is. All right, now let's move on to the side panel. There are a few cool tricks for the side panel that we do have to use. The first being the drop zone. So I'm sure there are people that are familiar with how to create information in the drop zone when they're not existing in the side panel or in your Salesforce. Okay, of course, this can be done by highlighting the email address. The signature from his first name to the last line in his signature. And we can now drag and drop this information to either create an account, a contact, or a lead. Those are the first three Salesforce options we have in the drop zone here. The fourth one is for that Outlook contact, but let's focus on Salesforce integration here. Now, if we want to create a new lead, a new account, new contact, we just drop it in, and it's going to prompt through right into our Salesforce. Okay, so let's mark this with all the other options that we need to make. We'll save it. And once he saves into Salesforce, all we have to do is refresh the side panel, and he will show up in the side panel. That's how you would typically create a new record. And there he is. Okay. Now let's say, for instance, that maybe we found out that Michael has an extension, or maybe he wasn't a vice president. Maybe he was a senior director or what have you. Okay, so maybe he's changed his information. Maybe we found more accurate information, or maybe he just emailed us saying, I have new information that's in my signature. Take a look. Okay, so now we can update information by that drop zone. We drop it into that drop zone, to that lead section. Now what it's doing is it's not going to automatically create a new lead here, since Michael James is already a lead in our system. What it's saying is that we're going to update that existing lead instead of creating a duplicate. So here are the fields that we're going to update. Perhaps we found his extension or his more direct line. Maybe he was promoted, so now he's the vice president. So we want to update that information very quickly. Okay. We can apply. Of course, it's going to ask us to proof check, just to make sure everything's correct in its right space. And when we save that information, now if we notice, we just want to refresh the side panel, and everything will be with the more updated information. Okay, so that's a good way to update with a drop zone as well. All right, of course, that update can be a good gap stop there to cross-check information for existing contacts, accounts, or leads if there are existing. So if I want to create an account before a contact, I would drop in his signature into the account level. And of course, I may find there are multiple accounts for Wellington. So now I have the option to update an existing account before I create the contact. Okay. Now, the other area I want to go into is more specified for contacts that we're working with. So when we're working with a contact, we may have additional information that's parsed out in the side panel. So if we're talking with Fred, perhaps he emails us with an attached quote or an attached invoice that we want to work with, that we want to save to our Salesforce. We can now use these additional opportunities or cases and record straight to them, or we can add straight to them. Okay, so we do have these quick links at the business card level, but they will follow you if there's anything that Fred has a contact role on within a Salesforce. So now if we want to shortcut straight to that opportunity, we can. If we want to add a quick note or even log a call straight to the opportunity, so if Fred and I have a call that we want to notate directly to this opportunity, we can log that call here. And now you notice that we can write our notes for that call, but it'll associate directly to Fred, and this is what we were talking about, this opportunity. Okay. If we want to record the email directly to here, we have our quick record option. So this is just a one-click option that's going to record it straight to this item. When I hover over, you'll notice that it's not going to record with the attachment. It's only going to record the subject and the body of the email. So it's more or less a stripped-down version of our standard record to Salesforce option. Okay, but it's still going to be a one-click option to quickly get this email, this conversation into Salesforce about this opportunity. If conversely we don't want to record the email, perhaps it's a one-word email that isn't important to log into our system, but perhaps it's included with an attachment, we can just drag and drop the attachment and save it to the Notes and Attachments section for that opportunity. Okay, so I could just drop this in here and it'll save to the opportunity. Now, one thing I do want to note here is if I'm not the creator of this opportunity, if I am not the opportunity owner, then I would not have the privileges or the user rights to do this. So to show you what that may look like, if I drop this into this attachment, oh, maybe I do. That is an opportunity I did create. That's funny. How about this one? All right, there you go. That's the one I was thinking about. So if I'm not the creator of this opportunity, I would get insufficient access. So I wouldn't be able to modify through the side panel. We can only abide by the rules that you have set for user rights on your Salesforce side. Okay. However, since it was saved successfully for this opportunity, let's shortcut straight to it and see where it landed. So here's the opportunity. And here's the attachment that I just saved. Here's today's timestamp. We're all set. So again, it's a really quick way to add directly to that item, right by the side panel. So you can drill down. We can save to the account level, to the contact level. But again, if we want to drill down and hone in and save quickly to exactly what we're working on, that's when these additional items can come into play here. Okay. All right. So let's move on to the record options. So when recording email, there are a few other integrations that we offer besides email recording for the composition. So let's work with Jake here. So we have Jake, we have Fred on this email. If you guys have seen a few demos, you know that we talk about this conference call for Monday. So they're trying to shore up and confirm this conference call for Monday evening. So if we reply back, now let's say that we have boilerplate language for this as far as what we need to accomplish for this conference call, who's in charge, what needs to be in place. If we want to put that template that's created from our Salesforce and inject it or insert it into the Outlook composition, now we can work with email templates. Okay, so we know that we have this conference call set. We just want to put our checklist of what needs to be accomplished beforehand. So we're responding to Jake and Fred. And we want to insert that language into the composition. So we can click on Salesforce email templates. And what this is going to do is it's going to route to all my template folders in Salesforce. And these are only the folders that I have access to as a user. You wouldn't be able to see or access any information if you don't have those user rights. You'll see more integration as far as what those the author is of those templates, what they involve. Okay, and once we click next here, this may be a similar or familiar window that we're looking at, the same as the regarding and synchronization or the recording for email recording. Okay. what we're doing here is we're asking, who do we want to address for this template, for this composition? So again, this email template integration is not supposed to be used, or isn't really used as a mass mailing tool, since it's going to ask you who you're addressing, and it's going to look to insert that information into those merge fields. So if we're addressing Jake here, and we have a contact merge on this template, we can click over Jake to the selected side. You see that contact merge has been checked. Right? We click apply. Now we have that template from Salesforce into our Outlook composition, and it's going to be addressed to Jake. All right. However this is saved in your Outlook site, whether it's if it's saved as a font, that will bring us over. If it's different, what I like to do is just, and again, this is an Outlook trick if you don't know, you can just format it by how you already have it, and you're all set there. All right, so that's how we can integrate with templates from your Salesforce in Outlook. And from here, now we can smart send and record, send to Jake and Fred, record back into our Outlook, back into our Salesforce. So it could be a very fluid workflow as far as getting information from Salesforce into Outlook and then recording back to Salesforce. All right. Let's say we want to add someone to this email. So if we know that there's Jake, there's Fred, but perhaps we have a partner of ours that performs the presentations for us, that's going to be on this conference call. Maybe we don't know their email offhand. Maybe we know that they're in our Salesforce. So if we want to insert them into this Outlook composition, we do have our Salesforce address book as well. Okay, so maybe I want to CC Tom Russo here. So I can click on the address book, and as long as I know his name or her name, I can search them in our Salesforce, highlight them, and then bring them over to the To field, CC field, and press OK. All right, now we brought that email address from Salesforce into Outlook. All right, now once we are set, we also have integration, or we have a way to track the email. Okay, so when we click here, we have the check mark, and now when Jake or Fred or Tom open this email and read it, we'll have a notification in the bottom right of our screen, same as when we dropped in that attachment. It's going to tell us Jake has read your email. So now we can follow up upon. And I can show you how that looks in a second. We do have a report functionality that gathers up all this information. So now we will send and record. It's going to suggest to record to Jake and Fred, but Tom isn't there because, again, Tom's from LinkPoint 360 and we've ignored his domain. That's why he's not showing up here. Okay, if I go to my follow-up, if you've noticed, my default is nothing. But if I set it to task, what you'll also notice is here's the next 2-day follow-up. So if this was a calendar day, I'd be following up on a Saturday, which is more likely I'd be following up on the Monday. Okay, and my append email body has been checked. So this means I'm going to record the email I'm sending out to the task itself. So now, I just want to follow up and confirm, Monday evening time for conference call. And we're all set here. So I'll record now. So now I've recorded that template. I've recorded to Jake and Fred. And if I shortcut to Jake, scroll down a bit, here's that additional follow-up task for the Monday due date. And here's the email that I sent and recorded out of Outlook. Right? Nice and simple. So we've integrated with a few parts of Salesforce and then recorded to Salesforce as well. All right. Now, since I set that tracker on that email going out of Outlook, where you can find that report is, again, in that bottom right white envelope in the icon tray. So when we right-click here, we can go to our Open LinkPoint Tracker, and this is going to show you a pretty flexible report of all the recipients that you've sent out to, their subject line. So here's one that we sent out 1 second ago. It hasn't been opened yet. This is when it was sent and the number of times opened. When we hover over these little body icons for the 3 recipients, we can also see who it was sent out to. Okay, and from here we can show all emails, only opened emails, unopened, and we can refresh for a certain amount of days. Okay, so that's how the tracker would work. All right, now let's move on to the synchronization. And specifically, I like to work with the calendar sync options. So for the calendar sync, I do want to note that when we create a new appointment or new meeting, they will be created in Salesforce as they would normally a Salesforce event when they are synced over. So when I work with meeting here, if I make a new meeting for today, now if you're not already familiar, the way the meeting synchronization will work is when you fill out the to section. I'll say it's a test meeting from Outlook. I'll give today's date. We'll set it as the New York office. Once this is all set here and the to field is filled out, now I can assign to those items in Salesforce. Now this can still sync over without assigning to any additional Salesforce records. It would still show up in my Salesforce calendar, but if you want additional information as far as if this is associated to an opportunity that we're talking about with Jake or Fred, then we can highlight this unassign option. And since Fred and Jake are filled out in the to field, it's going to suggest to associate to Fred and Jake here once it's synced up to Salesforce. All right. If there are additional related items that are associated to Fred or Jake's email address, we can click them over, and we can also associate this meeting to the opportunity as well. Click OK. And one other trick I want to mention here is we do have the ability to bring over the meeting type for your Salesforce event. So this is a standard Salesforce object. But if you have your drop-down menu item options listed as differently than what they are standard, we can bring those options over for that type field into this integration. So when we are syncing up this meeting, it's also going to label this meeting as a call, as a meeting. However you have it for this type field, it will also show on your Salesforce side. So that could be handy for just more information, more intel, as well as for reporting instances as far as what type of meetings are my users getting. Okay, so we can set this as a meeting or perhaps a call since it's a conference call. All right. Now, once I send this meeting to Jake and Fred, it will reside on my Outlook side, but I would still require synchronization to sync it up to Salesforce. So I'll send to Jake and Fred. Here it is. But now I need to sync over. So there are 2 ways, essentially, of how to sync information. Either an auto sync that can be set to an interval of hour or a certain time of day, as well as a manual sync where I can push that information over right away. This manual sync, if I click here, this comes with a few prompted screens as far as checking your work, seeing what rules are set in place, giving you a summary screen as far as how the information is flowing back and forth. So it is a very handy tool, especially if you want to confirm that you're syncing the correct information. But if you know that you've updated something, or if you're pretty sure about or comfortable of how you're syncing once you use the tool more and more, we have a middle ground as far as activating an auto sync right away. So to do that is if you right-click on the white envelope, and you can start a background sync. So this is if we want to trigger an auto sync that will sync all the information without the prompted screens. So when we click here, it'll give us one option saying if we want to proceed, which we do. And when we go to our home page, what we should find, let me just make sure if it's not working there. Okay, maybe that's just, well, what should happen is that it should be on our calendar. Funny, during a demo, of course this happens, right? So let's go to our manual sync and just make sure that it's being synced over. Okay, this is what it should look like. All right, so this is how you would do the manual sync. All right, perhaps if we change this to tomorrow, now let's try that again. So we should see this move from here to Friday by a background synchronization. Still hasn't worked. Okay, well, it should be working on your side. I apologize, it's not working right now. Maybe because we are testing some updates in the back end. So I am using evaluation key right now. So any questions as far as that? If it doesn't work for you, you can give us a holler to your sales rep. We'll be happy to help out. But again, that cool tool once it is working correctly. All right, great. Of course, that happens. So those are a few tips and tricks throughout the tool as far as the configure option, the side panel, the record Salesforce option, additional integrations within the email composition. The last trick I want to teach you guys, or the last icon that is very, very handy, is the little help icon that is throughout the integration. So this is help mode. If I go to my main screen here, I'll show you where this will be listed and throughout the integration. So if we have a question as far as what any of these options are, these sections, these buttons, what they do, all I have to do on my own is click the help mode. So I'll click this blue circle with the question mark. My cursor is going to carry that question mark, and now if I click on something here, it's going to bring me to our knowledge base to show you exactly what that is. Okay, here we go. So I clicked on the quick record option, and now it brings me to my, for lack of so many words, my cheat sheet to show you what these icons are here, straight from our knowledge base. And the knowledge base is a bunch of articles, just have step-by-step processes, big screenshots, take a look at those processes and see how they could be handy for us. All right, so if I want to click on something else as far as the drop zone, now it's going to take me to the drop zone. If I go to my record options, I'll still find that blue icon here, and I can question what is the follow-up. Okay, so that little question mark is very handy if you want to learn on the go. Okay, if you have any questions throughout the time that you're recording. All right. So I think that maybe that could be useful. Hopefully the demo was informative for everyone. Jill, I'll turn it over to you if there's any questions from the audience. I'll be happy to answer them.
Sure, thanks, Tom. And just a reminder to everyone, if you have questions about any of the features you've seen here, something you didn't see here, feel free to go ahead and type it into the question section on the GoToWebinar panel that you should all kind of see hanging out on the right side of your screens. I'll give everyone a few minutes to type, but we do actually have a couple questions, so we'll start with these and see if any more come in. So the first question here is, when you're syncing your calendar, which options should I select for what program takes precedence? So I guess when you pull up the synchronization screen and there's little green arrows, does it go to Outlook? Does it go to Salesforce? Which overwrites? Can you just talk a little bit more maybe on what comes up and why and maybe some of the options that are there?
Sure. So let's see if this brings up again. I may have to adjust some information. Here we go. Okay. So when we get to the summary screen, and this is just to show you a more visual picture here, but the information that is prevailing, or the most recent information that's been updated on either side, whether Salesforce or Outlook, that's going to be the prevailing information. So that is going to update on the other side. So if I made an edit to a synced calendar event in Salesforce, it's going to show me I'm going to update in Outlook, okay, with that updated information. All right. If we don't want that to happen, if we only want to sync in one way, or if there are updates on one side and we don't want to update in Outlook, or if we delete in one side and we don't want it to delete on the other, then we can set prevention options of how we want to specifically sync in our configure screen. So again, when we go to our LinkPoint Assist option here and go to our sync component, we'll go to Sync Jobs. Here's our Calendar tab. And below, we'll have our prevention options. So this is going to tell us, or going to put rules in place as far as we're not going to update going from Salesforce to Outlook. Or we're not going to delete, if we delete an item in Outlook, we're not going to delete it in Salesforce. Okay, so we can configure each of the rules for the calendar, for the contact, for the task. They can all be different as far as if we want to set certain rules in place for each. Okay. Hope that answers the question.
All right, thanks, Tom. And if you have more questions about that one, Patty, please either chat in or we can connect you with your account executive. Let's kind of skip ahead in the meantime and answer another question here. We're being asked, what is the easiest way to close a case from Outlook? I find that this can be a little bit tedious within Salesforce, and I know from experience there's a lot of different required fields and different buttons you have to click in Salesforce, but from the Outlook side, Tom, can you speak to any shortcuts or access we might have, at least on the case side?
Sure, absolutely. So let's see if I do have any case information for my test guys here. I believe I should. All right. So we have all the cases that are associated to Fred here. All right. They should show in this panel. Now these are all existing cases, whether they're closed or not. All right. So let's pretend that there's one open. All right. Well, all we have to do, again, since Fred is associated to this case, we can just shortcut to it. And from here, you can change the status however you would want. Okay. So just to show you what the indicator field might look like, if we want to change this to working, perhaps this is not closed yet. We closed it too soon. And when we refresh the side panel, it should update with the correct status. So we can shortcut from the side panel and close it as we need. But again, anytime we want to modify the case or modify an item from Salesforce, we would have to do it in Salesforce. You wouldn't be able to do anything directly within the within the side panel. Okay, we'll bring you to that screen of what would be where you would be able to do it within your browser. All right, and also just I'm sorry, Jill.
That's okay.
I do want to note here with the cases, especially, we can filter out certain cases too. So if this would be another project that you would have to be in touch with your sales rep to, but we can customize the side panel or the recording options to only show existing cases or cases that are not closed yet. So if you want to weed out, if it becomes you're inundated with cases, whether account cases, contact cases, what have you, we can weed out those cases as well. I'm done, Jill.
Okay. That's cool. No, this is live, everybody. Okay, so thank you, Tom, for that one. We'll go ahead and do the next question here. So is there or what is the best practice when you have a number of recipients on an email that's coming from our company so that we can avoid the same email occurring in Salesforce a number of times?
Okay, so if you have multiple people on that email and you only want it to show up once, um, I would suggest, and we'll use Jake, even though I only have 2 people on here. Let me record the email. And it's going to be as you know, it seems like a simple answer. Basically, you would just need to dedicate the record to either Jake or Fred, because it's going to reside on their activity history. Um, so the more people you have in the contact or the record to area, it's going to record to their individual activity histories for those contact records. Another way around it is if they are all part of the same account, perhaps you can record at the account level, but that won't show, I'm just thinking out loud here, that won't show at the contact level, it'll be vice versa, as well as the opportunity. So I would suggest, Jill, unless you know a better way, to just exclude or just, you know, make a point person as far as who's the point of communication for that project, and look to record to them to show up more than once. Again, if they're all tied into that project or per se opportunity, then you can include that as well, and they'll show up in one place.
Yeah, and as a follow-up to that, I know, and I'm watching Neil as you're commenting, we appreciate it. A kind of a follow-up to that might be, well, what if there are other employees on the email from your company that are also doing it? So if you and I, Tom, each get an email about Jake and Fred and Mike, and then we both go to record it, and in my experience, I always look, the side panel is going to show me if the email has already been recorded, and maybe that's something that can help Neil in this case.
Right, right, of course. It's always going to be fairly real-time information. So, and again, I totally look past that the option, not thinking there would be other people that on from my team looking to record. But you know, there should always be one person looking to delegate that recording responsibility up to Salesforce, so you don't get duplicates. Or even that case, you would see from the email section if there is an email with today's date or what have you in the side panel, that I know it's already been recorded. So it's a good place to reference from here before recording it.
And tapping kind of into this discussion about recording, when you are launching the dialog box for record, right now the default seems to identify any contacts or leads. Do you know if we can change that default to show an account as well, or is it only contacts and leads?
I'm sorry, from the record window you're talking about? Or
right, so in the record window, and I see Cheryl's asking about setting the default to record at the account level as well. So in this instance, and I think I know the answer, if the account is Genentech there, could we have it set to automatically appear on the right side of the screen? But I think you can kind of clarify maybe why that doesn't happen.
right, yeah, it's only going to suggest, I mean, the key piece of integration here and throughout the tool is we're looking for what is directly associated to the email address. So in this case, it would be the contacts. Okay, we wouldn't bring this over. Anything associated with that email address, whether accounts, opportunity, what have you, any of these items here, that would show up in the related section. So it really is up to the end user as far as how they want to work with this information being pulled in. So I do not believe that we can automatically associate or pull in the account record into the record to option.
Right, and I see, Cheryl, to your point, it is easy, especially when you're working on complex selling, like you're saying, to have a single place to see it all. Another way you could do it is if it's an inbound email to your inbox, Cheryl, you can quick record the email from to the side panel to an account record, I believe. And just as a point of clarification, Tom, can you kind of talk about the smart record and where those items go versus the quick record icon in the side panel?
Sure. So, we do have our record to Salesforce option. This is our most robust standard option as far as how to work with email. Again, the quick record is going to be more of a stripped down version as far as where we want to record this information without the attachment. So it's only going to record the subject, the body of the email, and only to where we have the quick record option here. Okay, so this option is going to record to Jake's contact level. This is going to record the opportunity. And it's only going to record to Jake. So if we have Fred CC'd on this email, it will not record to Fred because he is not present in the side panel. If we want to record to Fred instead of Jake, we'd have to make his information present from our toggle option here. Now we can record to Fred instead of Jake. All right. If we want to record to all the people on the email, so Fred and Jake, and of course I'm being excluded because we put myself in that ignore list. If I'm recording to Jake and Fred, we have our smart record. So this will record with one click to both Fred and Jake's activity history for their contact level. All right, so this can be seen as a record to all or record to one.
And I guess as just another point of clarification too, the smart record is looking at leads and contacts. So it's not going to go in the background and also say, oh, there's an opportunity or there's an account to associate this with by automatic. That's where the main record to Salesforce in our window comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
And what we can do too, Cheryl, is if you have a few more questions about this, I can have someone reach out to you as well to talk about some of your concerns or your interest in the different recording options and make sure that it's working as best as we can have it work for you. So we'll certainly have someone reach out if you'd like. Let's see. It looks like I have another question here. So let's switch gears a little bit. What is the best practice for a situation where an email is sent from Salesforce but also comes over to Outlook? So Neil,
Okay.
I'm not sure if I 100% understand the question, but maybe Tom can kind of pick away at it.
Okay, so I do know a lot of people email out of Salesforce and they reroute that to Outlook again. So basically, we can still record that information back to Salesforce from Outlook if you'd want to. It would still have to be a manual option. So if that email is going to then reside in your sent items because you sent it out, you'd have to go to your sent items and then look for it. Okay, so a good indicator, we can record, same as inbound, outbound emails, we can record our sent items, but a good indicator of what's been recorded by LinkPoint and what hasn't is that CRM code. So you may see this email come across from Salesforce into your Outlook, but it probably won't have that CRM code on it because it's not touched by LinkPoint yet. So it may look like this. And if we want to record this back into Salesforce, once it's recorded, now we'll get that CRM code. So that is a good, another good tip to have to record from our sent items. If you want to hold down the Shift or the Control key and record multiple emails, then you can still do that either by Smart Record or by Record to Salesforce. It'll show you a reminder that you're recording 3 items instead of 1 email. And the more items that you're highlighted on, the more options there's going to be within the record panel. Okay. Now for inbound, you would have the same option here, but if you're sending out of Outlook, out of Salesforce, it's more than likely going to be in your sent items. If it goes to your inbox, then you can still record. You would just still need to look for that indication, the CRM, make sure it hasn't been touched.
And as a point of clarification, and this is something I haven't had too much experience with because we send from Outlook here, not so much from Salesforce, on the marketing side anyway. But to Neil's point here, what if the email is originating in Salesforce? Is there a way to get the email sent from Salesforce to appear in Outlook? Is LinkPoint moving it to the sent mail? And I'm not sure if you're sending an email straight from Salesforce, that it makes its way over basically into Exchange or whatever your server is. Okay. And
yeah, I wouldn't know the answer to that question. I just know that LinkPoint isn't able to do that. So LinkPoint for email recording is going to be a one-way direction from Outlook to Salesforce. For calendars, contacts, and tasks, it's a bidirectional function. But for email, it's going to be from Outlook to Salesforce.
Now, if the email is sent from Salesforce, obviously a copy of it's saved in Salesforce on that record. Do we have a way to view that in the side panel as an object? I'm not sure if it falls in under our email, but it might be a customization.
Again, if it's being stored in Salesforce, and I'll show you under the activity history and associated to the email. So if it's storing in our activity history and it still has Jake's email address in the email field, it will still pull up here. So it still should pull up in our side panel because this is all Salesforce information that is associated to Jake's email address. So that should still be present in the side panel.
Okay, so you can view the emails if you're sending from Salesforce. And then again, to Neil and I are kind of talking through chat and live talk here. The other option, yes, Neil, is you can CC or BC yourselves on the email as you send out of Salesforce. What you'll end up with is obviously a bunch of emails you sent yourself in your inbox. And I think at that point you can kind of, once or twice a day, grab a bunch of them at once and multi-select and use the smart record or whatever else you needed to do if you wanted to kind of go further or work with them more. Oh, that seems to have answered it. Great. Okay, good. That's good. All right, we like the questions. Let's see, I think that covers all of the questions that we've kind of gotten here along the way. I'm just double checking the list here. If we missed something for someone or you come up with different questions or additional questions later on, please feel free to reach out to us. And I'm glad, Cheryl, to see that it seems to be the suggestions we're making already seem to be working for you. That's great to hear. We're live and we're solving problems, which is awesome. So looks like from now what we can do is I'll just go ahead and wrap up. So thank you, Tom, for your presentation today. I appreciate it.
Of course.
And I'm just going to close very briefly here. Let me show my screen. Okay, great. I just have a few reminders for everybody. We do offer a variety of resources in our online knowledge base. There's a lot of step-by-step articles, videos, and tips, so feel free to visit that and check it out. If you're an existing LinkPoint Connect user, you can reach out to your account executive or any member of our sales team if you have a question about your account, customizations or add-ons or partnership even. And our support team is also available via email, chat, and phone to assist if you have any additional questions. Okay, don't forget to visit the webinars page on our site for more information and schedules regarding our upcoming LinkPointers webinar sessions. Our next session is in 2016. I believe it's January 6th, where we'll do a full hour walkthrough and introducing LinkPoint Connect for Salesforce. So if you'd like to see a full soup to nuts version of what our software can do, feel free to join us. And we have a few more topical items on the list for January and February already. And thank you again for joining us today for our webinar, and we do hope that you'll join us next time. Thank you.